Hello and welcome to my final presentation. Throughout the course, I was tasked with researching different subjects pertaining to the topic that I chose. Multimedia and how it negatively affects communication is the topic that I selected. So it's easy to see that technology is changing around us quickly. In Sherry Turkle's TED Talk, Connected But Not Alone, Sherry talks about how technology is changing communication. For example, in the business world, we are having less meetings because we can connect with each other through mediums like email. But at the same time that we're having less meetings, they're becoming less productive because people are distracted by their phones and texting or other devices like sending emails on their laptops. The main point that Sherry was trying to bring up is that even though we may be communicating more through mediums such as our laptops and phones, we're communicating less in person. But I have to ask, why are we communicating less? And I believe it's because we're looking for an easier way to communicate, but losing the ability to work with one another face to face while this happens. As a force for social change, we can look at the internet. I would like to focus on Facebook. Although I'm not a big fan of Facebook, it allows people from different areas to connect and share ideas. As we share ideas, we can understand each other and communicate with more people in an easier fashion. Now, as an IT major who works in a technological support environment, my job literally revolves around technology. My job is to support developers in creating more advanced technology, and by nature, I work in a very high technology facility. Just like the majority of jobs, I communicate to the engineers mainly by using email. I personally find this to be the most convenient and quickest way to communicate with others. But if anything important happens to someone that I support, we can simply set a meeting face to face and work with one another to resolve any issues. In Jan Chip Chase's TED Talk, The Anthropology of Mobile Phones, he often speaks about when everyone is connected and what happens when ideas are shared immediately. A thought I've had is that ideas are being spread through devices that everyone is attached to. There will be complete changes with our interactions and usage with devices because people won't have to wait for anything anymore. If everyone is constantly connected, you won't have to wait for a letter, or even the time it would take for someone to go to a computer and send an email. With mobile devices, everyone is constantly connected, and this completely shapes our interactions with one another, as well as our usage of technology. In Jan's TED Talk, he talks about cell phones and how everyone will have one. One of Jan's main points is how we are delegating tasks to everything that we possibly can. I think there are positives in delegating tasks, such as having to go to a computer and to check and send email, while a phone is much more convenient. What happens when we use our phones for everything? Our persona will be lost because we are only alive through our phones and we don't spend time outside of them. While society is changing due to emerging technologies, it's clear that we're going to have a few issues that will need to be addressed. There have already been issues with unmanned aerial vehicles flying over people's properties, as well as the problem of privacy. Not only do these drones fly over people's properties, but they take pictures and videos of what would have otherwise been private. Another issue I'd like to bring up is the capabilities of phones. Nowadays, phones have the ability to take pictures, videos, and recordings of what everyone's saying. This has become such a big problem that there has been an entire upheaval for not only civilian laws to protect the civilians, but also police policies are starting to change to adapt to these emerging technologies. The issue that we are facing is how multimedia is affecting communication. By multimedia, I'm referring to all forms of communication, whether they be by cell phones, TVs, or computers. The origin of this issue for me is that I've been noticing people aren't connecting with each other enough, only with their devices. Families are focused on the TV or video games instead of with one another. The issue may be that we are all becoming less connected with one another and substituting this for the devices. The reason I decided on this issue for the project is actually a story. A few months ago, I was at a restaurant eating dinner, and there was a woman with a kid having dinner across from me. The kid must have been about 5 years old, and it was his birthday. The kid was all excited, jumping up and down, while the woman was just looking at her phone constantly. Lack of attention got so bad for the child that he ran to the mother's side of the table and sat down to just blankly stare at the phone just like she was. It is probably only with certain people, but I feel like this example was completely unacceptable. This example went to show me that it isn't only teenagers or adults who are affected by devices and multimedia, but everyone is being affected. It doesn't only affect families, but society as a whole. I correlated my issue to Jan's TED Talk, The Anthropology of Mobile Phones. Jan said that delegation can't be the solution to everything. I'm worried that no one will communicate and work with one another if they have the technology to do this communication for them. Originally, I believed technology was harming social relationships. And now that I've heard Jan's TED Talk, I completely understand that cell phones are one of the direct tools we are using to delegate communications. After some research, I found an article in the Huffington Post that talked about technology problems emerging that we need to teach people about. As a society, we've never had anyone to teach us that technology isn't everything in our lives. Like my story in the restaurant, people aren't paying attention to those around them, but to their devices alone. Another point made by the Huffington Post was that technology may be an addiction, just like smoking, where people have become addicted to their devices and need to constantly utilize them. Unfortunately, I believe people's connected to electronic devices is only going to grow more severe. Technology companies are selling products that people want. People want more convenience, which in turn will only make them upgrade to the next device, which in turn will have them spending more money on newer devices, and this will become a cycle. I've went into quite some detail on the issues of how technology has affected society as a whole when it comes to communicating with one another. We're so prone to use our cellular devices instead of communicating with each other, but is there a way to cure this? First, separate children from technology at a young age. They say a child's personality is set for life by the first grade, which is around the age of 7. If parents significantly minimize the use of technology at a young age, they might not have a dramatic need for it down the road. I have a 5-year-old cousin who is inseparable from her iPad. I approached the parents on the issue and in a professional way let them know letting their child live off of the iPad isn't the greatest idea. They haven't fixed the problem yet as she is still using the iPad. It's just one of those mistakes that we cannot let the rest of the nation's children make. With all this being said, it definitely boils down to the individual when it comes to using less technology. Moderation is key in absolutely any situation. There are some people who have to use technology a lot simply because of the nature of their work. However, some of them know when to utilize the on and off switch. When you're bored and have nothing to do, I completely understand messing around on your phone for a bit just to kill some time. Nevertheless, when it comes to family or friends events, you absolutely have to put the phone down. In my opinion, and I believe most will agree, it is simply rude and disrespectful playing with your phone when an organized event is going on. It shows you aren't interested in whatever is going on, which is fine, but don't show up to an event you're not interested in. This is my long-term fear with technology. Us slowly stop talking to one another, and it's already happening. I can connect with individuals who are 30 years older just simply because they grew up without the technology that we have today. Another approach to this matter is educating students at a young age on how technology affects us. Technology isn't bad. It's helped us out so much, but sometimes we take it too far. I believe the message isn't getting out as much as it should. There are courses in school about technology in general, but very few actually aware of the students on social change that has been implemented for us. I remember as a kid watching Nickelodeon, some of the commercials encouraged the kids watching to take a break from TV and go outside to get some physical activity for an hour. We should have a simple or similar concept like this, but there should be an application which limits the user to a specific time limit each day. This would be introduced throughout schools in order to combat those who are very used to being on their phones. Essentially, I would just let the students be aware of how technology could potentially hinder our communication skills, which is really, in the end, all that you can do. As stated before, it really comes down to